In the heart of the great forest kingdom of Akure, where the mist clings to the mahogany trees like a shroud, there lived two women whose names were never spoken without a sigh, though for very different reasons. The first was Ifeoma. To the villagers, Ifeoma was the morning dew. She moved with a rhythmic grace, her wrapper always perfectly tied, her skin glowing with the finest shea butter. When she spoke, it was in a melodic whisper that made men feel like giants and women feel like sisters. She was the village standard. To be like Ifeoma was the highest compliment a girl could receive. Then there was Zama. If Ifeoma was the dew, Zama was the thunderstorm. Zama was a tall, charcoal-skinned woman with shoulders as broad as a warrior's and a voice that didn't just carry, it commanded. Zama had no filter. She didn't believe in the soft word that turns away wrath. She believed in the hard truth that exposes a lie. She was the one who told the village elders their judgments were biased. She was the one who shouted at the marketplace when the scales were rigged. Once, when the village priest claimed a drought was caused by angry ancestors, Zama pointed out that the irrigation channels were simply blocked by the priest's own unharvested yams. For this, she was branded Okoyasi, the disaster. Mothers covered their infants' ears when she walked by, and the men joked that any man who married Zama would be buried within a week, killed by the sheer volume of her honesty. The king's weariness. King Oduduwa, the iron hammer of Akure, was a ruler who had seen too many battles. His palace was a sprawling complex of gold and ivory, but it was also a nest of vipers. He was surrounded by advisors who bowed so low their noses touched the floor, yet their hands were always in the royal treasury. His great queen had passed, and the tradition of Akure demanded he take a new wife to sit beside him during the Festival of Fires. The kingdom expected him to choose Ifeoma. It made sense. She was beautiful, she was quiet, and she was manageable. On the day of the Iron selection, the village square was a sea of vibrant colors. Ifeoma stood at the front, her eyes downcast, the very picture of submissive elegance. Zama stood at the very back, leaning against a tree, picking her teeth with a stalk of grass, looking bored by the pageantry. The king walked the line of maidens. He stopped before Ifeoma. "What will you bring to my palace, daughter of the soil?" he asked. Ifeoma knelt, her voice a soft coo. "My king, I bring the peace of the moonlight. I shall be your shadow, your silence, and the one who soothes your brow when the world is too loud. Your word shall be my only law." The elders nodded. Perfect. The king moved on, walking past dozens of women until he reached the back of the square. He stopped before Zama. The crowd fell silent. "And you?" the king asked, his eyes narrowing. "The woman they call the disaster. What do you bring to the throne?" Zama didn't kneel. She didn't even drop her grass stalk. "I bring a mirror," she said, her voice booming. "I bring a tongue that doesn't know how to lick boots. If you want a shadow, marry your cloak. If you want a queen who will tell you when your breath smells of rot and your advisors are stealing your crown, then you look at me." The palace guard stepped forward, swords drawn. "Kneel, wench. You insult the hammer. Let her stand," the king commanded, a rare, genuine smile breaking through his gray beard. "I have enough shadows in this palace. I am tired of peace that hides a fire. I choose the storm." Zama was named queen. The village went into a state of mourning, certain that Akure would fall within the month. The Palace of Mirrors. Zama's arrival at the palace was like a cold wind blowing through a stagnant room. Within 3 days, she had fired the royal tasters because she caught them taking bribes to look the other way while the wine was watered down. Within a week, she had chased the chief tax collector, Basharan, out of the throne room for trying to charge a widow's fee that didn't exist in the law. "She is a demon," Basharan hissed to the other advisors. "She questions everything. She demands to see the ledgers." A woman reading ledgers. It is an abomination. While Zama was busy making enemies of the corrupt, Ifeoma had been brought into the palace as a lady-in-waiting. The advisors, led by Basharan, saw her as their secret weapon. They pampered her, telling her that the king had made a mistake and that she was the true queen in their hearts. Ifeoma, whose sweetness hid a soul made of cold ambition, played her part perfectly. She spent hours with the king, speaking softly about how poor Zama was upsetting the people. "She means well, my king," Ifeoma would whisper while massaging his feet. "But she is so loud. The people miss the old ways. They fear her. They say she is the reason the rains are late." The king listened, but he noticed something. Since Zama had arrived, the palace accounts were full for the first time in a decade. The soldiers were actually being fed. The walls were being repaired. He was being told the truth, even when it hurt. The plot of the sunless day. Basharan knew that Zama was closing in on his biggest secret. He had been selling Akure's iron to the enemy kingdom in the north. If Zama found the hidden warehouse, Basharan's head would end up on a spike. "The king must go," Basharan told Ifeoma in the dead of night. "And the storm must be blamed." He gave Ifeoma a small vial of ondu, a poison derived from the desert viper. It didn't kill instantly. It caused a slow fever that looked like a natural wasting disease. "Put this in his nightly herbal tea," Basharan instructed. "Everyone knows Zama prepares the king's evening meal herself to protect him. When he falls ill, we will say she cursed him with her bitter tongue." For 2 weeks, Ifeoma did as she was told. She would wait until Zama left the king's chambers, then she would enter with extra honey for his tea, slipping the venom inside. The king began to weaken. His eyes grew cloudy, and his strength left him. The village gossip reached a fever pitch. "The disaster is killing the lion," the people cried. "Her words have turned to poison." Zama saw the change in her husband. She didn't weep. She didn't pray. She watched. She stayed awake in the rafters of the bedchamber, perched like a hawk. The night of the revelation. On the night of the full moon, Ifeoma entered the king's room. He was shivering under his furs. She held the golden cup, her face a mask of tragic sorrow. "Drink, my lord," she whispered. "It will help you sleep." Just as the cup touched the king's lips, a heavy hand slammed into Ifeoma's wrist. The cup flew across the room, the tea staining the white tiger skin rug. Zama dropped from the shadows, her eyes blazing. "You have a very strange way of showing love, Ifeoma."
"Zama.
"You nearly killed him." Ifeoma shrieked, instantly transitioning into her role as the victim. "Guards, help! The queen has gone mad. She is attacking the king." Basharan and the palace guards burst into the room. They had been waiting just outside the door. "Seize her!" Basharan roared, pointing at Zama. "Look at the king. She has poisoned him." "We found the cup in her hand." "The cup was in Ifeoma's hand," Zama said, her voice low and dangerous. "And the poison came from your house, Basharan." "Lies!" Basharan cried. "The word of a woman who hates everyone." The king groaned, struggling to sit up. "Zama, what is happening?" Zama ignored the spears at her throat. She walked to the rug where the tea had spilled. A small house rat had come out to lick the moisture. Before the eyes of the guards, the rat began to convulse, its body stiffening until it died in a heap of fur. "Ifeoma," Zama said, stepping toward the beautiful girl. "If this tea is honey, then drink the dregs from the floor. Prove your innocence." Ifeoma began to tremble. Her perfect composure shattered. She looked at Basharan, looking for help, but the chief advisor was already backing toward the door. "He made me do it," Ifeoma suddenly screamed, her voice no longer a whisper, but a shrill, ugly sound. "Basharan said the king was old. He said we would rule together. I only wanted to be loved." The guards froze. The betrayal was so naked, so raw, that even they were disgusted. The great cleansing. Zama didn't wait for the guards to act. She grabbed Basharan by his collar, a man twice her weight, and dragged him to the center of the room. She reached into his robe and pulled out a bundle of letters. "I didn't just watch the tea," Zama said to the king. "I found his messengers. These are the contracts for the iron sold to our enemies." He didn't just want you dead. He wanted the kingdom sold. The king, fueled by a sudden surge of righteous anger, stood up. The poison had not yet reached his heart. He looked at Ifeoma, the pearl, who was now groveling in the dirt, her beauty gone, replaced by the ugly lines of fear. Then he looked at Zama, disheveled, loud, blunt, and standing like a shield before him. "You are all right," the king whispered to the room. "She is a disaster. She has destroyed the peace of my palace. She has ruined the comfort of my advisors. She has shattered the silence of my kingdom." He took Zama's hand, and thanked the gods for it, for the silence was the silence of a graveyard. The legacy of the storm. Basharan was executed for treason. Ifeoma was banished to the far borders, where she had to work the salt mines, a place where no one cared about her soft voice or graceful walk. Zama remained the queen of Akure for 40 years. She never learned to be polite. She never learned to whisper. She continued to insult lazy officials and shout at crooked merchants. But under her reign, Akure became the most prosperous kingdom in the forest. No child went hungry, no judge took a bribe, and no enemy dared attack, for they knew the lion had a lioness who could see through any shadow. The people of Akure eventually stopped calling her the disaster. Instead, they gave her a new name, Oloria Toybase, the queen who corrects the world. They learned a lesson that stayed with them for generations. A pleasant face can hide a poisoned heart, but a sharp tongue is often the only tool sharp enough to cut through the darkness. They realized that the woman who offends you with the truth is the only one who truly loves you enough to keep you alive. And so, in the kingdom of Akure, they no longer pray for daughters as soft as the dew. They pray for daughters as loud, as brave, and as honest as the storm.